Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for this Inspire series that we have today. My name is Colin Young. I'm a senior consultant for Bridge Innovate. I'm excited to be able to share with you a little bit about virtual design sprints using Sprintbase. Bridge Innovate is a global network of business strategists, consultants, and designers that team up with you to spark distinctive design, courageous leadership, and agile change to transform your organization for growth and good. So really the goal for our Inspire series as a whole is to just share some valuable insights and lessons to support you on your innovation journey. So we're glad that you've joined us today. What I have here today, this is just a brief agenda for us on what I want to talk about when we think about virtual design sprints. So these four areas here are the ones that I'm going to talk to. And then actually in the middle, I'm going to dig in and we're going to do a brief demo of Sprintbase as well. So you get a chance to see it, the platform itself. So we'll speak to specifically what it looks like to work apart and together, solving some big, hairy challenges as well as building lasting design capability. And then how do we launch a design sprint, today? So the first thing I want to talk about here is as we think about this question here of is in-person always better? So we know that we're living in pretty unprecedented times. No longer can we just walk across the hall or step into our colleague's office to get their help brainstorming, collecting feedback on an early idea. So how could we continue to keep that sort of status quo of our working when so much of our work doesn't look anything like it used to? So you might find yourself thinking and hearing this phrase or this thought of in person is always better, particularly when it comes to running a design sprint. And since we can't meet with our team, maybe our pace of collaboration and creation has slowed down as we try and adapt to this new way of working. Sometimes we just need to put our heads together to solve some of these problems. But what if that process of problem solving could be conducted anywhere in the world on any device that connects to the internet? What if it doesn't have to be in person at all? So we found when we partnered with countless organizations who've chosen to push past sort of the geographic barriers to still generate powerful solutions, and their design journeys were all housed on Sprintbase. They use the 6 steps found in Sprintbase to walk step by step through their innovation journeys following the design thinking methodology. With the structure and timing that's built into the platform that I'll show in just a little while, it really makes it incredibly easy to launch your sprint and begin designing and innovating with your team. With the structure that Sprintbase provides, participants can connect with their teams based on whatever cadence and working structure that fits best for them. And they can also progress and design on their own time. This was actually really incredibly beneficial for a luxury goods company that we've worked with in the past who has utilized Sprintbase to support their high potential leadership program. So as an organization that's geographically dispersed really across the globe, they wanted to be able to continue to address these difficult challenges faced by the organization, and it allowed them to be able to connect at times that were best for them and then join in at some facilitated workshops at key points during the journey. So however geographically or physically dispersed these organizations may be, or your organization may be, Sprintbase helped them to chart a course toward powerful and meaningful solutions. And like all creative journeys, each journey began with a big, hairy challenge. So when we think about solving these challenges, where do we start? Not only does Sprintbase allow teams to work remotely on the same challenge regardless of the distance, it really allows teams to dig into some really tough challenges that don't always seem to have a clear answer or solution. One of the many draws that we see in utilizing Sprintbase is the speed of adoption is instantaneous. So what I mean by that is all you need to begin using Sprintbase is a challenge and a design team. The structure built into the platform really allows you to get up and running in a matter of seconds, rather than spending hours trying to build out structures and templates to support your team at various stages during the design process. In a time where business and other environments that we experience have seen some massive changes and shifts, it's really critical to spend as much time as we can charting the new ways forward rather than figuring out how do we get started. So Sprintbase guides participants through the design thinking process. It's a human-centered approach to solving problems. For us, we found that when we apply design thinking to these challenges, we are able to produce better and more innovative solutions. These 6 steps here provide the framework we need to build empathy for our users we're designing for, to more deeply understand their needs, wants, and pain points. From there, we unpack what this means for our users and what implications it may have as we design solutions. We focus on specific opportunities, brainstorm possible ideas to answer these questions. And then these ideas can mature into early prototypes, seeking to unpack key elements of a budding solution. Another aspect of Sprintbase that we really love is the ability to get and give feedback. So we know that the diversity of thought is proven to accelerate and improve the quality of innovative ideas we have. So we can actually use Sprintbase to engage with anyone in the world to provide feedback on our early prototypes. They'll see our focus challenge that we have, the idea and the prototype, and can offer some constructive feedback that feeds right back into the platform. And if participants happen to get stuck along the way, if you're running your sprint and you're not quite sure what to do at a particular step, there's actually a built-in guidance tab which allows any team member to not only get back on track, but also reinforce those skills that can translate into future projects as well. Each step in Sprintbase has its own set of guidance for that particular point in the innovation journey. So when we think about how Sprintbase really helps to support as we go through, I want to talk about building this design capability. So for some people, in a matter of just days, they can go through and experience what it's like to empathize for their customers, imagine new ideas, and even refine early prototypes as they prepare for launch-ready solutions. We typically see Sprintbase being applied in the following 3 manners that you see here, whether it's a short workshop or a training where we can dig into design thinking on a really rapid approach, or maybe we're conducting a design sprint. We're working with our team. We only have a few weeks to be able to come up with an early solution that we want to hand off then to engineers or other members of our design team to take things forward. Or maybe we have a project that requires lots of iteration, lots of refinement, lots of research, and so we might be spending a few months on this as well. People who have utilized Sprintbase for their projects have found that they were able to create connected and inspired solutions through step-by-step structured guidance, build and create new prototypes, solutions, services for their customers while working remotely, and incorporate this application-based learning for their team to build design thinking skills. So with that, I actually want to go ahead and pause, and I'll open up Sprintbase. We have an opportunity to see and explore what the platform looks like. I'll go ahead and show that process as we go through and logging in. So Sprintbase is a platform, as I mentioned. It allows you to be able to log in, and you have your own individual access. Even though your team may be joining into a particular sprint, I can log in and see the sprints that I have. For some people, there may be more sprints than others, but for the purpose of today, I'm going to dig into this example sprint that we have here of a better airport experience. You'll see here, these 6 steps here are exactly the same steps that I talked to before, this process of human-centered design to be able to walk through from research all the way to implementation. This dashboard here really serves as an opportunity to be able to dig into any of the key steps in this process. As we go through, you'll see this was the design team that was tasked with addressing this challenge here of how might we reinvent or improve the airport experience from check-in to boarding. So these team members including myself, were able to go in and identify potential solutions to be able to tackle this question here. So what I will do is I'm actually going to open up this first step here of field research. This is the point in the process where we might be going through and conducting lots of empathy activities where we would go and interact with people. We'd look at what best practices are in maybe our own industries or other industries as well. And we can actually post this for our entire team to look at. So whether that is creating an empathy map or maybe building out a persona, or as simple as documenting a photo or an interview. It's very easy for me to upload any documents in here to identify who was participating, where I talked to them, and what were the sort of key findings that we have. We see Sprintbase as really a place and an opportunity for us to synthesize on our top observations or our top components that we find, so we can really pull in and help us move forward. As we've conducted our activities on our own, then we come back together and really see what that means for the team as we dig into that. I'll call your attention just to a few things here. I mentioned personas. This is an opportunity. These are templates that are baked into the Sprintbase platform. So this allows me to be able to go in and add some particular content and help me or my team to be able to surface some of these key areas in here. This would be similar to maybe a collaborative whiteboard that you might have seen that I can share and work with my team as we go through. Each of these contents and these cards here are movable, and so I can be able to pull them together and focus in on specific areas. In this case, as a team, we identified and placed these labels here to focus in on desktop research or some of the empathy building activities that I mentioned before, to highlight interviews. And then we even went as far as to find some specific content or observations that are connected to some relevant or related topics such as baggage and security or long lines. This really helps us to be able to speed up that process. So I'm going to advance, and this really shows us how we can move from step to step in the process here. And you'll see that the content that was submitted by the team in this field research phase is still here in this workspace. Now, I mentioned Workspace here. I've also talked about a guidance tab. So there's not only a place where we can work together as a team, but if I get stuck or if I need any additional support to be able to help me through this particular phase, every step in the process has a guidance tab as well. In this case, as we're going through, we are looking at the observations that have been submitted, and we want to submit and identify a particular insight. So there are templates or suggestions that are baked into Sprintbase that allows me to have some structure as I think about what do people value, what are their pain points, what are their motivations, and I can use that to be able to submit and add content into here. As I add each of my cards into Sprintbase, you can see the insight that I've submitted in here. You even see my little avatar that lets me know who is posting these activities. So if I wanted to get more information, I could dig in and reach out to Brad, for example, and ask him questions about how he arrived on his particular insight. One of the other things that you'll see that's really valuable in Sprintbase is the ability to vote. So as we go through, particularly when we're connecting in a virtual setting and we can't physically come together, there is a time as we go through in each of these steps in the design thinking process where we need to refine and focus in on a specific components, a specific learning that we have. In this case, it's around identifying those powerful insights that we see. So this tool here allows us to actually go in and add votes in the way that you would just dot vote in person to be able to push forward specific votes or specific insights that would be relevant to our design challenge. And this serves as just a simple plus minus voting. And I can see not only how many votes that I've casted, but also what the number of votes as a team has been submitted in here. This is a great way for us to build consensus very quickly, and it doesn't even have to be conducted in our facilitated workshop, but can be something that is done right before. So when we come together, we merely have to talk about those top insights that came through our process. So there are quite a few more steps in here as we go through and we talk about and see all the different ways to be able to dig in. I do want to just identify here as we go through some of the elements, the sort of top voted elements, particularly in these phases here, get carried forward into the next Workspace tab. So it allows me as a participant to see that content and continue to move forward as we go through the design thinking process. Another area that's really valuable is the individual workspaces. So the opportunity for me as I connect with my team, we can work in this team workspace where we all get to see and move around these cards based on our conversation that we have. But because we're working offline as well as online with each other, it's important for me to be able to refine and work through the content that I have. So each participant has their own workspace where they can be able to move these cards as well that doesn't disrupt the team workspace. Everything that's posted to Sprintbase, whether it's posted in your team workspace or an individual, it is represented and replicated across all of the workspaces. So everyone gets to see the content that you add during the process. The other thing that I want to call attention to is as we continue to go through what's so valuable in this process, particularly as we continue to make our way through a design and landing on a solution, is the ability to take all of the content that's been posted in here and have that answer that question of what's next. Where does all this go? So I'm going to actually move down to this last step here in this process, which is we refer to as show the world. So whether it is a PDF or an HTML, we're actually able to generate an output of everything that was submitted into Sprintbase. This allows us to be able to see not only the context and the challenge that we're going after, the team members on our particular sprint, as well as the process that we went through, but specifically to dig into the particular sprint that we were going after, and even seeing some metrics and data to be able to connect back to each of these specific steps in the process. You'll see that there's a sprint summary that identifies the insights, the how might we's, and the top ideas that helped lead us to our final output. And in each one of these steps that we were going through, all of the content that was submitted is then posted in this report. So I can not only see who has submitted an interview, so if I wanted to ask more questions about this interview of Jenny, I could go and talk to Kristen and ask her to talk more about this. But I could also go in if a video has been submitted, for example, such as this video here, I could actually click on it and be able to listen in and dig into that information in more detail. So you'll see all of this content that came through during our sprint is then pulled into this report that allows us to be able to really reflect on anything that came through during our time together on the sprint. So with that, I'm actually going to jump back. We had a chance to do a quick little demo here, but what I want to do is really dig into what it looks like. How do I launch this? And so I mentioned before, when we think about launching a sprint, really the key elements in here are identifying the challenge. So figuring out what are we trying to tackle here, the goals of that, and the deliverables of our particular sprint that we're going after. Just like we are connecting here today using Zoom, video conferencing is really, we've seen as being critical to supporting a virtual design sprint, whatever format that may be. Some people are using Teams, some people are using GoToMeeting. We like to use Zoom, but some way to be able to connect in with your team. So um, whether you're working in Sprintbase and digging into a particular step, or you're coming together and talking through your findings at each point in the journey, it's incredibly valuable to be able to work together and see what's going on from that. And of course, Sprintbase, it serves as that foundation for us as we work in a virtual format. When we think about key players, I mentioned the challenge and the team, and then of course the tool, right? So these are the three areas that we've talked to so far. And when we think about the key players or your team, it's really important to not only have your team, but be thinking about who will help me champion this going forward, whether that's your direct supervisor or maybe an executive sponsor who might be able to help drive that forward. Identifying individuals such as a team leader and a coach really help to drive the process forward as we go through. Sprintbase does have the structure that's in place to even help us keep to our timeline and move from step to step based on the best practices of the time that we should be spending in each one of those steps. But if we need to spend more time in a particular area, this is where a leader, someone who is maybe more familiar with the design thinking process, can really help. Oftentimes we see teams who are going through in a sprint process really need some extra coaching to be able to really dig into those particular areas. And that's one application where we, as Bridge Innovate, have really been able to support teams that are going through their own design sprints to be able to help surface some of those latent observations, those needs that didn't quite make it to the surface in their voting and in the conversation, to really dig into that and really challenge teams to seek for ideas that are powerful and inspirational as they go through this design process. The last thing I want to mention when we think about the key players is this idea of an observer or a feedback provider. So we have our design team, we have the people who are joining in. You saw the design team for the airport experience, but there's also another role that can come in here with an observer. So if I want other people to be able to see what's going on, but maybe they don't have the bandwidth to be able to jump in and actually design with me, but they can follow along and see what's going on. They can comment at certain times when they're able to connect, maybe join in on a workshop that we'd have. It really serves as a great way to be able to not overwhelm maybe a sponsor or a stakeholder who wants to be participating in this, but doesn't have the time or the resources to be able to plug in. Another similar aspect of an observer is a feedback provider. So just like in the design thinking process, as we go through and we land on a specific prototype, it is critical for us to be able to get feedback really early and really quickly. So baked into Sprintbase, like I mentioned, we can go in and send our prototypes out to somebody, and those feedback providers really help to refine design there. The last thing I want to mention is the schedule, right? So Sprintbase does have the structure that's built in place. When you launch your sprint, you have a structure that's established in there, but sometimes that structure doesn't fit with the way your team works. Maybe you have a few days that you want to dedicate to a sprint. Maybe you're spending time over a few months and you need to adjust the timeline. So we can go in and make those adjustments into Sprintbase to be able to reflect and continue to keep us on track as we go through. And of course, it's important to be able to not only meet in person with our teams on this virtual format, but also to identify some individual assignments. How can I as a team member contribute to this process? This slide here is really just an example of a potential journey, the process that we might go through as we're going through. I talked about really getting clear on that challenge and setting that up and knowing what we're going after. And then it's really launching and getting into your sprint, digging into each of these steps here. These working sessions that you'll see here are working sessions that we found the structure really works well for us as we're going through and supporting and coaching teams to be able to tackle their particular challenge, checking in at those key points. But of course, there's work that's being done in between these working sessions as well. During this time right now, you might have seen we are offering free access to Sprintbase up to May 20th of this year. So this allows teams to be able to jump in and get started today to be able to tackle some of their challenges. And so through that, we're also providing some weekly Q&A sessions that are able to support teams as they're wanting to go through, but maybe need a little extra guidance along the way. Of course, after that time, Sprintbase is still accessible, but access accounts are available for purchase, as well as supplemental coaching packages to really dig into some of those tough challenges that you might have. So with that, we have about 5 minutes left. I do want to just open up if there are any questions, anything that anyone who's joining us today would like me to focus in on or address in particular. You can either submit that in the chat, or unmute and ask the question as well, and I'll be happy to answer any of the questions that you may have.
Hi, Colin. Thanks a lot for the presentation. Am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the lovely presentation and knowledge sharing. It's amazing to know about the Sprintbase in a very detailed way, and also showing the demo as well. I was very curious to do a hands-on experience, but then I discovered it's not accessible for me at the moment. And
Okay.
but I was really happy to see the demo. One question: I come from Switzerland, and I'm working as a user experience designer here at Schindler Creations. So we are more or less in the same line of the business in the professional side. But one question on the remote collaboration side, doing design sprints. How do you ensure about user research or the empathizing? Let's start from the basic, the field research we do, doing the interviews nowadays online. Mm-hmm. So how do you make sure this connection of the empathizing the users is the same as the physical one?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the ways that works really well is while we can't necessarily go out and do sort of field observations, sit and watch people interact with a particular product or that sort of thing, it really does serve as an opportunity for us to be able to connect in using even just a format similar to this, of doing a video conference, asking questions to be able to share a story and talk to an experience, and then use some questions to be able to pull out more detail, exploring maybe show me how you might interact with this product if they have it with them. And that serves as a way for us to be able to still capture that information even when we can't physically be there. So definitely relying on interviews and questions that are in there, and really unpacking from the format that we can.
All right, thanks a lot. And apart from this basic templates like personas, CJM, interviews, voting tools, are there any other templates from the business side of the model, like, or is it only focusing on the design sprints, particularly for the user research process?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I didn't actually show some of the additional prototypes or templates that are available within Sprintbase to be able to make sure we get to everything. But I can kind of show you a couple of the submissions in here. I'll actually open that up. There are quite a few templates that are built into Sprintbase that allows team members to not just go in and think about the creative components of the idea, but also to really dig into what does this mean for the business? How do we take this forward? How do we refine that and get it ready to present and take that and building that business case? So what I've taken us here is this is the implement stage. So that final step in this process here. And I've talked to these templates here. You'll see there are quite a few templates that are built in here, whether that's a roadmap, A/B testing you want, maybe actually building out that business case, or if you're familiar with the business model canvas and that fits with your team as well, to be able to start to identify those components. So I'll just click on this one as an example. and you can see that structure that may be familiar to you to be able to actually go in and start adding in content and type to be able to fill out each of these elements here, and then be able to save that for the team. In addition to these templates that are loaded in here, if you find that there are other templates that your team works with in the past, you can actually go in and upload any image that you have of a template, and this serves as a whiteboard to be able to work with your team as well. Guidance on creating a video pitch, and of course continuing to not just refine our ideas, but also building out experiments. How do we plan out whether that's a lean experiment structure or just a basic experiment of what we've learned, and how we're going to test it. Those types of things are also built into the Sprintbase platform.
Thanks a lot for the answer. And for the prototype, I see here it's only for the uploading of the photos, or they also provide the tools, or not the tools, but the plugins for the softwares like Sketch or Adobe XD or Figma?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in this case, it's really the content that you're seeing here is individuals who have, whether that's drawing on a piece of paper, or maybe in this case, they have some concept drawings that they're able to pull together. These were done outside of Sprintbase and were then posted and shared with the team. So if you have a designer who knows how to be able to pull this together, they might build this out and then share it with the team, get some feedback, and continue to refine. One element that I do want to mention here is this this item here of a video or a web link. Basically what this does is this allows you to tap into any sort of other program that you might have that's web enabled. So if you think about, maybe you have what would be a good example? Maybe you have a Miro board that you're working with, or you've done something collaboratively in another format, or maybe you shared that content. This really allows me to be able to pull that in, and if the individual has those viewing permission rights, it allows them to be able to open that directly. It'll pull in all of that content that is there and show it, and then of course allow me to sort of tie into another web platform that we might have created something on.
Thanks a lot for your answers. Really appreciate it.
Yes, no problem.
And how can we, just the last question.
Sure.
How can I access, in the webinar you mentioned that you have the free access until end of May or so? Yes,
that was the last thing I was going to mention here is what we can do is we have a form that's on our website to be able to request access, but what I can do is actually send some of these questions to you directly, as I have your contact information from signing up from this webinar. And with that, we'll ask things like what challenge you have in your design team, and we can go ahead and open up that access for you as soon as we have that information. And of course, I mentioned there are some orientations and some Q&As opportunities. So if you need some additional support along the way, we have some periodic check-ins that we are offering to be able to support individuals who are taking advantage of Sprintbase during this time that we're in right now.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks a lot. That would be great.
Awesome. Well, I'll get that to you shortly after we drop off. But I know we're past time. I do want to thank you for joining, and for the others who have joined as well. We really appreciate you spending the time, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. Have a great day.
Thank you.